Hi, my name is Ford Oster, and today I'll be talking about visual perception as it relates to teaching and the education career. So to begin, I'll be talking about bottom-up processing. So bottom-up processing is the idea that individuals process visual input by starting off by kind of analyzing basic units or features of a stimulus or object, and then kind of combine those features together to comprise a whole image or the whole stimulus. And so if you look to the right here, this image here, we have at the bottom some kind of squiggly lines, straight lines that are all just kind of basic shapes. Uh, and then if you move up, they form individual letters. And then if you move up another level, it all forms the word safe. And so that's how we kind of are processing, especially when we're learning different symbols, such as the written English language. And so when we are looking at that, we're looking at, again, the kind of the basic shape of the letter, to form the letter and then combining those letter together to form that word in this example safe. And then we have top-down processing, which is kind of the opposite in a sense of bottom up processing. And so with top-down processing, uh, this is when we are have some kind of basic knowledge about what we're already looking at. And so we're using our existing knowledge of the world along with some basic feature keys to try to kind of process what's happening. And so if you look at the right here, we have this kind of scenic view. And so an individual looking from at this vantage point might recognize that the trees on the right and the left of the image here are bigger than the trees in the center. And but with top-down processing, we are able to infer that this is not due to the trees in the middle just being smaller than the trees on the right and the left. This is due to um, after processing it, recognizing that those trees actually are just different in distance relative to ourselves. And so the trees to the right and the left are closer to us than the trees in the center of the image. And this is related to the idea of theory of unconscious inference. And so we have this theory that suggests that when we perceive a stimulus, we make unconscious inferences about it. And so this is a type of top-down processing. And so if you look to the image to the right here again, we have this image of this puppy, this dog that's kind of hiding behind a tree here. And so, but we don't actually see the whole dog. And so we're assuming that this whole dog is a whole dog and not just half a dog, because we can see the left half, but the right half is hidden behind that tree. And so we're inferring that that right half of that dog does exist, and that is a whole dog and not just half of a dog. But this we don't actually know. We're just inferring based off of what a dog looks like, and that half a dog is very, very unlikely to exist, and wouldn't exist naturally. And so when we're looking at these kind of things, especially when something's hidden partially, we're assuming that that whole thing does exist and just part of it is covered up from our vantage point. So these are my references. And just to kind of tie this in, particularly to the teaching and education field, uh, when we're especially talking about younger kids, like first graders, kindergartners, maybe even like up through like the end of maybe elementary school, where that's when individuals are really starting to kind of learn what the world is, what's going on around them, and really trying to make sense of their place in the world. And so, particularly with like bottom up processing, I'll start with that. With bottom up processing, say that someone's maybe like you'd have like a kid that's learning what like the number 13 is, what the letter B is, learning their alphabet, learning their numbers, learning all that kind of stuff. And so you have an individual that's looking at the number 13, but it looks similar to a B. So they're trying to figure that out. And so if it's bottom up processing, the way to be doing that is by identifying that the shapes in the what they're looking at is a 1 and a 3, and then they would understand that the 1 is before the 3, and then that would comprise the number 13, and that'd be an example of like bottom up processing when they're learning the numbers. Similarly, if they have a sequence, say if the numbers like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and they are trying to determine what if the symbol 13 is a 13 or if it's the letter B, capital B. And so if they had that kind of inference where they knew that it was sandwiched in between other numbers, that might be an example of top-down processing because they're using their understanding that if there's a sequence of numbers, it's more likely to be a number that's there instead of like a letter, for example. And so that's using their existing knowledge about the world and how it works. And then theory of unconscious inference, that can be seen all around us with teaching, and particularly just in the world as well. Like there's countless times when images will be partially hidden. For example, if you're in the front of your classroom teaching and you're behind like a podium or a desk or something, and so only like your top half maybe is present and visible, your students are going to see only the top half of you, but that might be, but they know that uh, you're a whole individual person and not just the top half of an individual, and so they're making that inference that you do have legs, you do have feet, even if they visually can't see them, and so that can be a big learning part as well because we're learning about what kind of to expect to see, like what does a human being look like, what does a zebra look like, what does different animals look like, um, what what should we expect from the world in visually speaking, and so if something is partially hidden, what will we expect to see under that hidden part? And so that's a big part of learning what is in the world and what is existing in the world, and can be a big part of that. That way we're not confused when maybe the hidden part is removed and we can see the whole part, and we do see a whole dog. We're not surprised by that right half of the dog existing because we know what a puppy looks like. We know what a dog looks like. And so learning to identify what objects are and not being surprised when we are seeing the whole image or only part of the image, and being able to recognize what that image is at varying levels of the image being hidden or not hidden. Um, and so that's all I have for today. Just as a recap, we talked a little bit about bottom-up processing, top-down processing, and the theory of unconscious inference and how it relates uh, in the teaching world and education paradigm. Thank you for listening to me.